episode 798 of the podcast. It is Super America, the Air Tour Sports Podcast. It is Friday, November 3rd, 2023. People, I hope everybody's doing well. I hope everybody is having a great day. Fun Friday episode ahead. By the way, happy birthday to my producer, Matt. Matt, we brought him on to start of college football season. He has been a godsend. He has helped with our social media. He's helped improve our YouTube. He's helped improve this podcast. So happy birthday, Matt. Thank you. Enjoy the weekend. Be ready for work on Sunday night. And I hope everybody is ready for a fun episode here of the Friday edition of the Aaron Torres Pod. Bluntly, you know what we're going to talk about. Mega college football weekend. So many big games here in week 10. LSU, Bama, Bedlam, Texas, Kansas State, Georgia, Missouri, Clemson, Notre Dame. I'm forgetting a bunch. Washington, USC. So many big games. We are going to dive into them all. From there, a very quick break. We will then get you updated on the latest at Michigan. I know many of you are tired of this story, but I'm telling you, there's a new twist every day. The latest. The other 13 Big Ten schools are trying to get the league to punish Michigan, even if the NCAA won't. Will it happen? Will it not? We will discuss that. And then finally, we'll wrap with America's favorite podcast segment where Aaron was right, where Aaron was wrong. The segment that I get more feedback on than anything I do. You guys hate when I get stuff wrong, and we will wrap the show as we always do there. Thank you guys and girls for your support. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to subscribe. Obviously, if you're on Apple or Spotify, subscribe there. But listen, it's Friday. You're busy. There is no more time to waste. So let's get to the topic of the day. And the topic of the day, we have ourselves a jam-packed weekend in college football. Listen, I didn't want to be the one to tell you. Last weekend wasn't that great, though. I mean, Utah, Oregon, Florida, Georgia, but there really wasn't that much on the docket. This week, it's the exact opposite. We have so much to get into. And quickly, like if you want the detailed 7, 8, 9-minute breakdowns, make sure to find the College Football Betting Podcast. I do that every Thursday. Apple, Spotify. We have a separate YouTube channel for that as well. But I do just want to quickly, on the Aaron Torres Pod, rip through the big 7, 8, 9, 10 games of the weekend because there are so many to get to. I'll give you my official picks on and on. Let's start. There's only one place to start the first weekend in November, and it is very simply LSU Bama. There's always a lot on the line, and there is obviously quite a bit on the line in this one. Listen, if Alabama wins, they have a pathway to win the SEC West this weekend. Now, Ole Miss would have to lose to Texas A&M. I don't think they will. But these are two top 15 teams in the new, college football playoff rankings. There's always a lot at stake. And obviously, it feels like if Alabama wins this, they're pretty much going to Atlanta, and they're probably playing Georgia to go to the college football playoff. LSU, by the way, has been playing much better since that second loss to Ole Miss. They have won 4 in a row. So this is a big game, an important game. And what stands out to me about this one, very interesting. This really does feel like, to me, one of the most extreme styles make fights type games that we have had in college football this year. These two teams, huge brands, huge coaches, ton of success. Yet this specific season, they're doing things completely differently. And what stands out from the LSU, let's start with LSU, because I'll say this. Like Brian Kelly, we've talked about Nick Saban and his evolution throughout this season and the coaching job that he's doing, changing things up. Brian Kelly deserves the same amount of credit, because when you think about Brian Kelly, Notre Dame, what do you think about? Run game, O-line, defense, low scoring. You know that LSU is the number 1 scoring offense and the number 1 total offense in college football coming into this game. That's right. It's not USC. It's not Washington. It's not Tennessee. Pick the best offense that you know. It is LSU this year. And this is part of the reason why Brian Kelly came to LSU, right? It was to coach the caliber of players that could put up 45 points a game. That's exactly what Jaden Daniels is doing. Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas are the best wide receiver pair that I have seen in college football this year. And I've said for weeks, I believe Jaden Daniels should be in the Heisman Trophy contention because, yes, LSU is 6-2 coming into this game. They'd probably be about 4-4, maybe 3-5 if they were getting even average quarterback play, because let's be honest, that defense is not very good. You don't need me to tell you, but the stats kind of back it up. The stats have since day one backed it up. This team just gives up a lot of yards, a lot of points. Started on opening night, 41 points given up to Florida State. From there, it really hasn't gotten better. 39 a few weeks ago to Missouri. You go on and on down the list. 56 to Ole Miss. 31 to Arkansas. It's just been a long season for that defense. And here's the scary part for LSU. Coming into this week, usually out of a bye, you're refreshed, you're recharged. LSU is the opposite. Mekhi Wingo, one of their star defensive linemen, is hurt, likely out for the year. I saw Brian Kelly say 6 weeks for that injury. He's probably not coming back this year. And then 2 defensive backs, Deuce Chestnut and Denver Harris. Brian Kelly didn't call them suspended, but he said they're not practicing and they won't be available for this game. That sounds like a freaking suspension to me. So offense is elite, defense is not. And then you have Alabama, which is the exact opposite. Nick Saban has gone back to the old days, back to the drawing board. He has an elite defense, great run game, and the quarterback is doing enough to win. Jalen Milroe isn't Tua. He's not Bryce Young. He's not Mac Jones. We've talked about this, and that's okay. But he is leading this team to wins. He is leading this team to success, and this defense is the difference. I just gave you the defensive stats on LSU. How about Bama? Last 3 games, and I think this is important. You're playing good teams now. The last 3, let me say this, the last 3 SEC games, well, the last 4 SEC games, 10 points to Ole Miss, 17 to Mississippi State, 20 to A&M, 21 to Arkansas, 20 to Tennessee. So you go back, take out that Texas game, and even in the Texas game, remember, Alabama led going into the fourth quarter. They had given up just 10 points going into the fourth quarter. The dam broke. The offense couldn't stay on the field. The defense eventually wore down. But outside of the Texas game, Alabama has not given up more than 21 points all season. And this is maybe my favorite stat. In the 3 big wins, A&M on the road, Ole Miss at home, Tennessee at home, Alabama has given up a combined 6 points in the second half. That is incredible. It is a testament to Kevin Steele. And ultimately, as we get to the pick, it's why I think Alabama wins this game. Listen, LSU, they're going to move the ball. They're going to put up points. But a couple things stand out about this Alabama team. One, LSU, they face good defenses, but Ole Miss isn't elite. Missouri is good, but not elite. You go on and on down the list. The best defense they faced was Florida State. They got blown out of the building. Now, I think to LSU's credit, they are a better football team. But I guess my question is, how much better are they really? Defense is not very good. And I think even when you look at the totality, coming into this game, I'll be honest, right? And I said this on the college football betting pod. Like, I kind of thought, LSU has been playing really well the last couple weeks. Well, look at the schedule. 3 games ago, they probably should have lost to Missouri. They definitely should have lost to Missouri. Then they beat a bad Auburn team at home and they beat Army. And then they had a bye. So it feels like they're getting better. But are they really, or did they just hit a soft spot of the schedule? We will find out on Saturday. As far as the pick, I am going to take Alabama. Now, on a confidence scale, I will not say I am very confident in this. I will say Alabama wins 27-21. Don't feel great about it. I think from a betting perspective, it's kind of important to note DraftKings Sportsbook. By the way, we talk about it all the time, but new customers, you can bet $5 on any game, get $200 in bonus bets instantly when you use the promo code Torres. But when DraftKings have a line where a home team is favored by 3, that essentially means that Vegas thinks they're even. So I don't have a ton of confidence, but I think the combination of a beat-up defense, a not very good defense, and this Alabama team is resilient. Remember, they trailed at the half against Texas A&M. They trailed at the half against Tennessee, came back to win both games. I like Bama to win. I like them to cover. Let's keep it going. Let's go out west. Very interesting game. Washington at USC. Washington, a 3-point favorite coming in. And this is a very interesting game between 2 very interesting teams. Washington, we know, only undefeated team in the Pac-12, had that huge win against Oregon 3 weeks ago. They're now number 5 in the college football playoff rankings. Problem is they haven't really played very well the last 2 weeks, okay? 2 weeks ago, so they beat Oregon 3 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, they play Arizona State at home. They end up winning 16-7 to a bad Arizona State team. The only touchdown they score was on a pick 6. They had under 300 yards of total offense. Not exactly the high-flying attack that you expect from Washington. Last week, it wasn't much better. Stanford, they win, but it was 28-26 going into the fourth quarter. They hold on. So 2 bad games since Oregon. And it is worth noting, even in the Oregon game, they actually got outgained. Oregon outgained them. Washington won. So it's not often. I can't think of very many times a team has been outgained 3 straight times coming into a game and went 3-0 in all those games, unless they have an elite defense, which Washington doesn't. USC, you know the narrative on USC by now. We've talked about it a ton. But they were on a 2-game losing streak. Last week they play Cal. And that game was wild. That game was wild. It was crazy because, Jake Fagus, who writes for us at AaronTorresOnline.com, he's a Pac-12 guy. He texts me. He says, Torres, you watching this game? And I didn't have it on. USC was down 28-17. And I turned it on. It was on Pac-12 Network. Yes, I'm one of 7 people in America that gets Pac-12 Network. I turn it on, and I want to say something that's going to be unpopular. Everybody wants to criticize USC. Lincoln Riley's leaving. Caleb Williams is opting out. I thought USC actually showed some resilience in that game. They trailed by 11 at the half. And what was interesting about that game, if you were watching closely, going into the half, the final play of the first half, USC gets a first down in the red zone. The clock expires. They go to halftime. Then, of course, because it's the Pac-12, the refs realize there should have been a second on the clock, okay? So USC is trailing by 11 at that point. They come out of the second half. They're allowed to kick a field goal. They missed the field goal. So even coming out of the halftime, you'd think there'd be some momentum, and there wasn't. And so they rally, they win the game, and I'm by no means saying that the defense played well. But in the second half, they did force a bunch of punts. They did force 2 turnovers. And remember, that was how USC won games last year. Great offense and a defense that forced a bunch of turnovers. They forced 4 last week. And going into this game, I'm going to be honest. I like Caleb Williams. I like USC. One, Washington is not playing well. Like, you cannot debate that. Even a Washington fan wouldn't say that. But 2, I think everybody's given up on USC. And I think if Washington's a step slow, they're not playing at their best, this is a game where I could see USC forcing 2, 3, 4 turnovers and making it interesting. From the offensive side, when USC has the ball, everybody gave up on Caleb Williams. And I'll say this. Everybody was saying, Caleb Williams needs to opt out. And I'll be honest, I even said it on this show. If Caleb Williams and USC went out, they're playing for a Pac-12 title. And I would add this too. Caleb Williams, if he wins the next 3 games, that'd be a head-to-head win over Michael Penix, a head-to-head win over Bo Nix, because they play Oregon next week. I think you're probably talking about Caleb Williams as your Heisman Trophy winner if USC wins out. A lot has to happen, but I look at this USC team. I thought they showed resilience on defense, and I thought on offense, they're going up against a team that Washington's defense isn't good. In the hundreds nationally, they get a pass because the offense is so good. I expect USC to get the win at home, shake up the playoff picture a little bit. Obviously, that would be Washington's first loss in league play. Oregon USC next week then essentially becomes a de facto elimination game in the Pac-12 title race. That game is in Eugene. I like USC to win. Let's keep it going. A couple more games that are worth noting. This isn't a top 25 matchup, which is crazy, but Notre Dame going to Clemson. By the way, it's crazy. I got a buddy who works in that media market. One of my best friends, as a matter of fact. He invited me down for the game. We were going to all go, get together, get families together, tailgate. We were planning it in, June, July, August. And then we kind of saw the ticket prices and the parking, and we decided against it. Thank freaking goodness, because Clemson is not good. Clemson is 4-4. Notre Dame is 6-2. They're coming off a bye. They're 7-2, as a matter of fact. 6-2, 7-2, whatever. Notre Dame is a slight road favorite. And it's interesting because we know the narrative on Clemson. Dabo, tough week, back and forth with Tyler from Spartanburg, which we talked about on Wednesday's show. But I'll also say this. Of Clemson's 4 losses, 3 of them have been on the road. The only home loss was to Florida State in a game that they largely outplayed them. And I do think there is a scenario, I can see it, where Dabo rallies the troops. It's a noon kickoff. Everybody's doubting you. Nobody believes in you. And you get the victory. I'm not picking it because I don't really know what the pathway is. The problem for Clemson, they can't throw the football. They're not very good. They're not very good offensively. Bottom line, end of story. I can sugarcoat it all I want. It's the truth. They're not very good offensively. Cade Klubnik has not been good at quarterback. And I don't know if that's because his O-line can't block and he doesn't have elite receivers, or he is just not good. Well, this Notre Dame pass defense is one of the best pass defenses in the country, and they're, of course, coming off a bye. So I'd like to give you the big, strong, bold take, but to me, this is kind of a stay away. I'm going to watch this one. I'm going to enjoy it. That noon Eastern window is loaded, by the way. But I can't actually bet this game because this is a game that I think Dabo could rally the troops, but I would have to take Notre Dame to win. Clemson is not very good right now. They are not very good. A couple other games that are worth noting. Let's go to the Big 12. And I said this earlier in the week, and I truly believe it. We have Bedlam, Oklahoma at Oklahoma State, 3:30 Eastern time on ABC. And what I said earlier this week is I think you can legitimately argue that Oklahoma State is it will be the most hostile environment that any road team, Oklahoma is on the road, that any road team will play in college football this year. Let me explain why. We have a lot of realignment going on across college sports, right? But at the end of the day, think about how Oklahoma State went down. Like in the Pac-12, everybody's leaving, everybody's going somewhere else except for Washington State and Oregon State. Kind of like your last day of high school. You say goodbye, you hug, I wish you luck along the way. Some of us are going to the local college, some of us are going here, whatever. The Big 12, that was not the situation. Texas and Oklahoma left high and dry. Problem is everybody hates Texas. Well, Oklahoma, their biggest rival is Oklahoma State. And in previous iterations of realignment, we all kind of thought that Oklahoma and Oklahoma State were tied at the hip. Remember, in the early 2010s, when the Pac-10 wanted to expand, it was foregone conclusion. If Oklahoma goes, they're not going without Oklahoma State. So when Oklahoma left for the SEC, that was shocking. And bluntly, Oklahoma left Oklahoma State left for dead, okay? It's easy to forget this now. Nobody thought the Big 12 was going to survive when all that happened. You had politicians trying to write letters and file lawsuits on behalf of Oklahoma State. It was really ugly. Well, Oklahoma State survived. And now check this out. You know that these two teams are tied for first place in the Big 12? This is kind of a crazy stat. We are through more than halfway through the conference season. 5-way tie atop the Big 12 right now as Texas, Oklahoma State, Kansas State, and Iowa State all have one loss. So this is a big game. Oklahoma is obviously coming off the loss last week to Kansas. And the thing that concerns me if I'm an Oklahoma fan, Kansas didn't do anything amazing. It wasn't like Oklahoma turned the ball over 6 times. It wasn't like somebody got hurt. There was weird weather, but both teams had to deal with it. That's what would concern me. As a matter of fact, Kansas had to deal with more adversity. They were playing their backup quarterback, Jason Bean. And so I look at this game. I look at the fact that, by the way, if you do not know the name Ollie Gordon, great name, by the way, Ollie. And I used to have a neighbor with a dog named Ollie. So, I got a soft spot for that. Actually, it was my roommate, but whatever. Neither here nor there. Ollie Gordon is a monster, okay? Last week against Cincinnati, 25 carries, 271 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns. Week before, 29 carries, 282 yards, 4 touchdowns. He's now had five straight games with 100+ yards rushing. During that stretch, he had one game where he had 100+ yards rushing and 100 yards receiving. And I actually think Oklahoma State is one of the great stories in college football because this was a program that lost a ton of players to the portal. Spencer Sanders, their starting quarterback, went to Ole Miss. Their 2 best wide receivers leave. A defensive lineman actually left for Oklahoma. Their best linebacker goes to USC. And Oklahoma State just keeps on chugging along. As far as a game, as far as a pick, I would lean Oklahoma State. They are a 6-point home underdog, and that just feels like too much to me. I don't think Oklahoma's playing very well right now. And more importantly, I think Oklahoma State has a lot to prove. They're at home. I didn't make it one of my official picks, but give me Oklahoma State plus the 6. Let's stay with that other big Big 12 game, Kansas State at Texas. Another game. Again, there's 5 teams in the Big 12, all with 1 loss in league play. 2 of them play in Stillwater. 2 of them play in Austin, Kansas State against Texas. Big one here. Texas does not have Quinn Ewers, and it looks like he's not going to be back for the foreseeable future. If you watch the Texas game against BYU last week, it is very clear that Steve Sarkisian does not trust Malik Murphy, the backup, in the same way that he does Quinn Ewers. Texas had a special teams touchdown in that game. And then outside of that, they ran the ball 35 times, all while passing for just 25 pass attempts. And so I bring it up because Sark does not want Malik Murphy to beat him. And my concern if I'm a Texas fan. So Texas, they want to run the football. The problem is that Kansas State has an elite run defense, top 20 nationally. And then on the other side, Kansas State has the best run offense in the Big 12, fifth nationally in the country. 5 senior offensive linemen at Kansas State for the reigning Big 12 champs. Remember, they won the Big 12 last year. And so when I look at this game, what I would say is this. The spread, Texas is a 4-point favorite. The over-under in this game is set at 49. If I had to make a bet, I would actually take the under because both these teams want to run the football. Both of these run defenses are really good. I don't think either quarterback is going to be put in a position to have to win the game or put the team on the shoulders. This is going to be low scoring. This is going to be 2017 one way or the other. I expect low scoring. Quickly, we'll rip through a couple other games. Not going to spend much time on these. Missouri at Georgia. Georgia's a 15.5-point favorite. Listen, Georgia's going to win this game, but I do believe that the narrative on Georgia, it swings too far one way or the other. When Georgia lost Brock Bowers, oh, they're done, and could Florida give them a game? And I said on this show last week, no. Georgia's going to destroy Florida. That's exactly what happened. Well, this week it's like, oh my God, they don't even need Brock Bowers. They're incredible. And I'm like, they're really good, but they're not like they're a very good team. I don't think Missouri is going between the hedges and winning, but can I see the scenario where Missouri, where it's 31-21, Missouri's a good team. Brady Cook is an underrated quarterback, 70% completion percentage, and their 3 best wide receivers are all former big-time recruits. Luther Burden was the number 1 wide receiver in his class 2 years ago. Theo Wease is a former 5-star, started his career at Oklahoma with Lincoln Riley. Mookie Cooper, former 4-star, started his career at Ohio State. When your 3 starting wide receivers, your 3 best wide receivers, Luther Burden, 5-star, everybody wanted him. Theo Wease started with Lincoln Riley in Oklahoma. Mookie Cooper started with Ryan Day in Ohio State. That is a deep receiving core. The defense is good enough. Give me Georgia to win. Give me Missouri to cover in that game. Also in the SEC, Texas A&M and Ole Miss. Ole Miss is a 3-point favorite. This is the most confusing line in the world to me. Listen, I like Jimbo Fisher. I just feel bad at this point. But what has he done to make this a 1-possession game on the road? Remember, Texas A&M has lost 8 straight road games. 8 straight road games. And on top of that, they've not only lost 8 straight road games, Jimbo Fisher has yet to beat a top 25 team on the road since he got to Texas A&M. So now it's all going to change. I just don't see it. He doesn't trust Max Johnson. The team really didn't look that much better coming out of their bye last week. The defense is awesome, and I think the defense can keep it close. But I think Ole Miss has 28 points. I think that's enough for them to win. I also like the under in that one as well. By the way, all my picks at AaronTorresOnline.com. Quickly, other games and scores and stuff like that. Kentucky at Mississippi State. Kentucky's a 3-point favorite. Cannot bet that. Kentucky has not won in Starkville since I believe 2008 is the stat. Arkansas at Florida. Florida's a 6-point favorite. Cannot bet the Hogs. Can't bet this game, period, because I think Arkansas should be improved after they fired their offensive coordinator. I think it's a little hard to expect them to go on the road and get the win, though, but I could see it. I'm not saying it will happen, but I could see it. In the Pac-12, really interesting one, UCLA at Arizona. Arizona back-to-back big wins over Washington State and Oregon State. Ultimately, though, I do think that probably it is a UCLA win. That offense has been much better since they changed the quarterbacks a few weeks ago. I'm trying to think of what else. Oh, I got a little upset special for you. Just keep an eye on this one. Noon Eastern, Jacksonville State at South Carolina. Jacksonville State, first of all, first ever matchup, I have to assume Gamecocks versus Gamecocks. It's the Jacksonville State Gamecocks of Alabama. Do you remember who coaches at Jacksonville State, though? A little guy named Rich Rodriguez. You probably forgot that. Well, Rich Rod is doing Rich Rod things. They're 6-2. He was 9-2 last year. They're in the transition to the FBS, so they're not eligible for a bowl game. So this is kind of their bowl game. They run the ball very well. South Carolina can't stop anybody doing anything. I don't know if my Jacksonville State Gamecocks have enough to get the dub, but do I think they can keep it close? I absolutely do. You know what this reminds me of? Arkansas fans, cover your ears. Last year, Liberty goes to Arkansas late in the year. Hugh Freeze, you're starting to hear buzz. Could he be a candidate at Auburn? goes out and gets that win, it kind of solidifies, okay, this guy's ready for the big boy jobs again, gets the Auburn job. Rich Rod, West Virginia may be opening. Could he use this to springboard that West Virginia job? It remains to be seen, but I think that upset could happen. Again, all my picks at AaronTorresOnline.com. All my picks courtesy of DraftKings Sportsbook. Thank you, everybody, as always, for your support of the Aaron Torres Pod and Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. And we have a major announcement as legal sports betting is now in the state of Kentucky. That is right. The Aaron Torres Pod and Aaron Torres Pod YouTube has partnered with DraftKings Sportsbook and the DraftKings Sportsbook app. And here is the best part. DraftKings has an incredible offer for listeners of the Aaron Torres Pod who are first-time customers with DraftKings. This is the deal. Here's what you need to know. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Bet $5 on any game, just $5, and you get $200 in bonus bets instantly when you use the promo code Torres. That's right. It's that simple. Again, first-time customers, download the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Bet $5 on any game, pro, college, any sport you want, and get $200 in bonus bets instantly when you use the code Torres. Thank you to our new partners, DraftKings Sportsbook. Thrilled to be working with them. Take advantage of their offer now. I do want to switch gears. And as we've done basically pretty much every episode of the Aaron Torres Pod here over the last couple of weeks, I want to go ahead and give the latest on the Michigan football scandal. And it's interesting because, you know, I've gotten a lot of this the last couple of weeks. Torres, nobody cares. You guys in the media are going out of your way to overplay this. Nobody cares. I would actually say it's the exact opposite. I think more people care than anybody realizes. I'm doing radio interviews in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and Little Rock, Arkansas, and College Station, Texas. This is all anybody wants to talk about. It's new. It's different. It involves the team that we all thought was the best team in college football. Now none of us know exactly what to think of them. And so I bring it up because it's fascinating. There's always a new layer, and it's not black and white. There's not an easy, this is right, this is wrong, this wasn't this was like, it's complicated, it's layered, it's nuanced, and there's always new information coming out. And so it's interesting because the latest new information was actually something we talked about here on the pod last week. And I want to take a minute and give you guys and girls credit, because when you actively, it's a little pat on the back, a little humble brag, when you actively choose to listen to the Aaron Torres Pod and Aaron Torres Pod YouTube, we talk about stuff and tell you about stuff days in advance, weeks in advance, stuff that nobody else is talking about. And then it comes out 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 days later. It happens all the time. No big deal. It's what I do. I don't really care if I get credit or not. But remember, last Friday, we talked about the latest piece of news in this Michigan scandal. Last Friday, the NCAA was on campus with Michigan. And a lot of people asked me, Torres, what's going to happen? Can the NCAA do anything? I said, the NCAA can't really do anything because the NCAA procedures are pretty straightforward. They have to write up what's called a notice of allegations after they do the investigation. And even if they did that in record time, Michigan has 90 days to respond to it. And so nothing from the NCAA perspective can happen this year. But if you go back to Friday's show and listen to what I said bluntly, I said the thing that nobody's talking about, the Big Ten could decide to come in and punish Michigan unilaterally of the NCAA. They don't need to wait. They don't need to collect data. They don't need to give Michigan 90 days to respond. If they feel like something has been done wrong, they can come in and essentially say, hey guys, we believe you screwed with sportsmanship. You screwed with the integrity of this conference. We don't want you representing us in the postseason, in a bowl game, in the playoff, pretty much anything. And I said last week, I said, I don't think the Big Ten is actually going to do that, but they have the ability to. And I said, I guarantee you they are going to get pressure from other schools to do exactly that. And so why do I bring it up? What is the latest twist? Oh, I don't know. Literally that exact same thing came out on late Wednesday. Pete Thamel, great reporter, not criticizing him because he just, maybe he just listens to the Aaron Torres Pod. I don't know. But he put out a report that on Wednesday afternoon, the Big Ten coaches got on a call. They did the normal thing. Then Harbaugh was asked to leave. And basically over the next hour, basically everybody just tore Michigan to shreds. And essentially the gist of the call was the Big Ten's other 13 schools trying to pressure the new Big Ten commissioner, Tony Petitti, into punishing Michigan, saying you don't have to wait for the NCAA. You can do it yourself. Here is a direct quote from Pete Thamel's article. It said, collectively, the coaches want the Big Ten to act right now. A source familiar with the call said, what are we waiting on? We know what happened. So basically, it's exactly what I told you, is the Big Ten coaches are trying to pressure the new commissioner, Tony Petitti, to make a move, punish Michigan, and make sure that they don't represent the Big Ten in the college football playoff, postseason, whatever. So now the question becomes, is anything going to happen? Is the Big Ten actually going to have the guts to do it? Should they even do it? And that's what I want to talk about now. Bluntly, I'll be honest. I don't think Tony Petitti is going to do anything. And as a matter of fact, I'll take it a step further. As of a week ago, I'm certain he wasn't going to do anything. Because after I talked about it on the show on Friday, and even before, I made a few phone calls, people in the know in the Big Ten kind of footprint. What they told me is Petitti has no real interest in doing this, right? He's a brand new commissioner. He took the job in the summer. He's not from college sports. He's trying to get into the landscape of college football and college sports. Keep in mind, this is all going on while the Big Ten is set to integrate 4 new teams, USC, UCLA, Washington, and Oregon over the next couple months. They got schedules, they got travel, they got logistics. He has 18, 19, 20 sports under his watch. And oh, by the way, Michigan is still a great team. We don't know how much this is impacting their success. And it's good. If they're really good and they go to the college football playoff and they win, that's great for the Big Ten. So I don't think he wants to get involved. I don't think he will get involved. But I will say, I think it's going to get interesting over the next couple weeks. And I actually think the most important thing that could happen in this investigation, in this whole part of it, is what happens when Michigan actually takes the field. Because it's interesting. I was thinking about this over the last couple of days. Michigan, usually when you get a bye in week 8, week 9, week 10, it's a good thing. Recharge the batteries. Nick Saban actually said it earlier this week. He said, we needed the bye. I love having the bye late in the year. It just gives us a chance to recharge. It was actually the worst possible thing that could have happened to Michigan. Because when you look at Michigan, I mean, think about it. This scandal basically breaks like a day before the Michigan State game. Then they go into the bye last week, and every single day there's a new story. The Washington Post story, the ESPN story. They're buying tickets in the Big Ten. They're buying tickets in the SEC. Connor Stalions, that profile comes out. Every single day there's a new twist to this narrative, and they can't get back on the field and change the narrative in a good or bad way. And so a lot of whether I think there's anything that's really going to come of this, the Big Ten schools wanting the Big Ten to investigate, I think it really just depends on how Michigan looks on the field. And I think one of two things is going to happen, and it's going to work out well for one side or the other. Either Michigan is going to come back out, kick the crap out of everybody, win the Big Ten, and then at that point, there really isn't much anybody can say, right? Because at this point, you can argue, that the Nebraska game was tainted and the Minnesota game was tainted, whatever. But you can't sit there and say that's why they beat Penn State and Ohio State. Connor Stalions is gone. Nobody's scouting anybody in person from the Michigan perspective. And oh, by the way, they're not stealing your signs either. And if you were dumb enough not to change your signs, that's on you. So if they come out and they win the Ohio State game and the Penn State game a week from now, well, what are you going to say? They're the better team. They deserve to win. Good for them. If you're Penn State and you can't beat them, maybe it's just because they're better than you. If you're Ohio State and you can't beat them, it's because they're better than you. I also think the opposite could happen as well. If Michigan loses, this whole story from the Big Ten's perspective goes away. I don't think people really care if Minnesota's mad that Michigan destroyed them. If Ohio State wins, then they're the best team in the Big Ten. We all make fun of Harbaugh, and I'm not going to make fun of Harbaugh, but that's going to be the narrative on social media. He couldn't win without Connor Stalions. Connor Stalions is the secret weapon. And then this goes away. And so I think if you're Jim Harbaugh, just survive until Saturday. Now, I will say Saturday against Purdue is going to be very interesting because I do think this narrative is going to go one of two directions depending on how things go against Purdue. One, if you beat Purdue 52-3, they're a 32.5-point favorite. You beat them 52-3, then it becomes they're just awesome. They didn't need Connor Stalions. They didn't need to steal signs. They're just really good. Then you get Penn State next week. Then you see how the rest of the season plays out. I'd also say the opposite too. If that game's 21-17 deep into the fourth quarter, everybody's going to be making jokes about Connor Stalions and this and that and the other thing. So if you're Michigan, you need to get back on the field and you need to change the narrative immediately. Go out there, destroy Purdue, beat Penn State, and go into the final 2 weeks against Maryland and against Ohio State and prove to everybody that you are the best team in the Big Ten. But if you lose some games, then the questions start becoming, okay, it was probably with Connor Stallions. But as far as the Big Ten stuff is concerned, listen, bluntly, we'll see if anything changes. But once they get back on the field, I don't think people in the Big Ten are going to have a leg to stand on. They're either really good and they're going to win the conference, or Connor Stallions played a bigger role and they are not good and they're going to end up not winning the conference. And we know that, the last couple of years may have been fraudulent. So we will see what happens, but I don't expect anything to happen. The NCAA investigation is a different deal. Until further notice, I would expect Michigan to kind of chug along as they have been. And I do want to go ahead and wrap with America's favorite podcast segment, where Aaron was right, where Aaron was wrong. By now, you know the concept of the segment. Yes, I stole this from my buddy Colin Cowherd. Every single week, Colin does where Colin was right, where Colin was wrong. And I decided to bring it to the Aaron Torres pod for one very simple reason. It is because over the course of a week, a month, a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, nobody loves giving out more hot sports takes than your boy Torres. Torres said this. Torres said that. You should have listened to Torres. Torres never shuts up. So we do where Aaron was right, where Aaron was wrong every single week, highlighting my best takes of the week, but also acknowledging that I get a lot of stuff wrong. Fun way to wrap the week every week. Let's get to it. Where Aaron was right, where Aaron was wrong. Where Aaron was right. So in week 3 of college football this year, I was watching a meaningless Ohio State Western Kentucky game. And I tweeted out, I said, look, I know it's only Western Kentucky, but this is the most complete team from Ohio State that I have seen since 2019, when they won the Big Ten with Justin Fields and Chase Young and an elite defense as well as an offense. And everybody crushed me. Torres, who cares? It's Western Kentucky. It doesn't matter. Well, fast forward, first college football playoff poll was released earlier this week. And who is at number 1? Ohio State. Credit to the Buckeyes. Credit to Ryan Day. We talked about it after the Penn State game. The bottom line is this was a program that could not keep going, hoping to put up 50 points a game and not playing real defense. They have completely revamped the defense. The run game is doing much better now that TreVeyon Henderson is back. And the pass game isn't elite, but it doesn't have to be this year. Doesn't guarantee they win a national championship. Doesn't guarantee they beat Michigan. But I am here to tell you, this is the most complete Ohio State team that they've had. And it's important this year because the quarterback play has not been as good. Credit to Ryan Day for revamping this team. Where Aaron was wrong. All right, my Twitter mentions, they blew up on Sunday because Will Levis was unbelievable for the Tennessee Titans. Now, I know Tennessee played on Thursday Night Football, but let's focus on Sunday for right now. Will Levis was unfreaking believable. Okay, listen, and where I was wrong was I didn't get it. Listen, I said dating back to 2 summers ago, when people were talking about him as the number 1 overall pick, I said, I don't see it. Then they struggled last year. He was banged up. The O-line wasn't good. But at the end of the day, I said, I don't see a front end of the NFL type quarterback. Well, apparently I need to get my eyes checked because that guy was unbelievable on Sunday for the Tennessee Titans, of course, wearing the Houston Oilers jerseys. 4 touchdown passes, super elite, big arm. Guy looked like a young John Elway out there. Can it sustain over time? I don't know. But he looks like he's at least got the tools. Good tools, and I'll say this too, great organization. Mike Vrabel knows what he's doing. Great front, like they just have all the pieces except for the quarterback, and I'm genuinely intrigued. I hope he is the guy because it makes for another fascinating team in the AFC. Credit to all of you. You blew up my social media. You told me I'm an idiot, and I sure am. Let's get back to it where Aaron was right. So look, for years now, and I'm not the only one, but for years I've been saying, Dabo Swinney, you got to get with the times, dude. Listen, I know you don't like the portal. I know you don't like NIL. I know you wish it was 2011 and guys stayed for 4 years and they believed in the system and they were Clemson men. But that's not the world we live in. And if you don't change, if you don't evolve, if you just flat refuse to talk to use the transfer portal, you're going to end up getting left behind and you're going to end up not being the program that you were. Well, 3 years now into the NIL, into transfer portal, we see what Clemson is. They are by literal definition an average football team, a team that is 4-4, and it used to be an achievement to beat Clemson. Now they just lost to a bad NC State team. Florida State just in their conference has clearly passed them, and they are so far behind everybody else at the elite levels of college football. Now, can they get back? I think so, but they just don't have enough depth. They don't have enough size. They don't have enough speed. We've said it for weeks. They look like a completely average ACC team with not enough talent around. So we'll see if Dabo figures it out in the offseason. But this is on him. He has been stubborn. He has refused to evolve, and he has officially gotten left behind. Let's get back to it where Aaron was wrong. And let's switch to college hoops. So when Louisville fired Chris Mack a few years ago, and they hired Kenny Payne, I said, I like this hire. Alum, John Calipari assistant, elite recruiter. Kenny Payne has been a disaster at Louisville, okay? Kenny Payne has been a disaster at Louisville. They lost on Monday to a D2 team, which is why we were talking about it. And I don't know what else to say other than that I'm a freaking idiot, okay? Bottom line is, look, when the hire happened, it just made sense. You weren't getting a Bruce Pearl. He signed a contract extension. Nate Oates had a huge buyout. And so go with the alum and go with the guy that's been around college basketball, okay? I'm not always in favor of hiring the alum because sometimes guys come from the NBA and they don't really know what college hoops is about. Kenny Payne was in college basketball for 10 years at Oregon, Kentucky, etc. Unfortunately, it isn't working out. And the bottom line is I don't think this can be salvaged because I've said, or I don't know if I've even said it on this show, but it just feels like one of those situations where they went 4-28 last year. You got to be about 500 playing for at minimum an NIT berth, if not an NCAA tournament berth, to feel like there's a positive direction going. Losing to D2 teams doesn't help. And I don't see the scenario where he does enough to give his fan base confidence that he deserves a year 3. So I was dead wrong on this one. I thought Kenny Payne was the guy. He is clearly not. Let's get back to it where Aaron was right. On Monday, Cooper Flagg committed to Duke over UConn. Credit to Cooper Flagg. And afterwards, everyone said, Torres, you said he was going to UConn. No, I never said he was going to UConn. What I said is exactly how it played out the whole time. I said that Duke should be deemed the favorite, but that UConn was making a stronger push than anyone was giving them credit for. Well, what happened? He commits to Duke. Trilly Donovan, that incredible social media account, puts out a detailed report on his commitment, and he said exactly what I said. He said all along, everybody thought it was Duke, but UConn quietly worked in the summer, got him on campus, impressed him more than he expected, but in the end, he just couldn't say no to Duke. So congrats to Duke, an incredible player. And let me say this too, and I'm not saying this is the UConn guy. There's no, moral victories in recruiting, but the fact that Darren Hurley got to the finish line neck and neck with Duke when Duke was perceived to be the overwhelming favorite, that is a great sign for this program, where they are and the type of calibers of players that you can get. I will say bluntly, I don't think UConn has ever signed a player as highly ranked as Cooper Flagg. I guess Andre Drummond might be the exception back in 2012. But I bring it up because even in their heyday, UConn has never been the number 1, number 2 player in America school. Well, they're in the mix for Cooper Flagg. They're going to be in the mix for pretty much everybody going forward. Credit to Dan Hurley, but also credit to Jon Scheyer for getting it done. Speaking of which, where Aaron was wrong, Jon Scheyer. I had some major questions about Jon Scheyer when he was hired, because what I said was, I was like, I get that you want to keep it in-house, but it's not like he's been the assistant coach that's been there for 10 years, that knows everything, that knows everybody, or not 10 years, but 20 years, knows everybody, lengthy NBA career, whatever. When he was hired, I kind of just said he was kind of the next guy in line. If Jeff Capel had stayed, it probably would have been Jeff Capel. If Steve Wojciechowski had stayed, it probably would have been Steve Wojciechowski. If whoever, Chris Collins had stayed a million years ago, it probably would have been Chris Collins. And so I wasn't overwhelmed by the hire. And what I said was, watch for recruiting. I said 2022 will be fine because Coach K is still coaching that team. 2020 he's still coaching. 2023, most of those kids will be committed before Jon Scheyer coaches the game. I said 2024 is where you got to keep your eye out, because that will be the year that kids have seen Duke for a year on the court, and we'll see then if Jon Scheyer can recruit. Well, you talk about being wrong. Just got the number 1 player in America committed. 2 more 5-stars could be on the way here in the coming weeks. And Duke almost certainly is going to finish with the number 1 recruiting class in the country. And oh, by the way, they start preseason number 2. So Jon Scheyer, my guy, if you're listening, I owe you an apology because Aaron was dead wrong on that. Let's wrap with a couple other ones where Aaron was right. So I saw this press release. I thought it was interesting. The Packers GM, Brian Gutekunst, put out a statement basically saying they need more time to evaluate Jordan Love. Quarterback, Packers are 2-5. Where was I right on this one? Well, I said during the whole Aaron Rodgers debacle, I said, I don't care how much of a diva he is, how much of a pain in the butt he is. This reminded me of the end of the documentary, The Last Dance. You're tired of Michael. You're tired of Scotty. It's too much work. It's too much this. Listen, when you have an all-timer, you do whatever you can to hold on for dear life rather than pushing them out the door. And this is what I said at the time. I said, all these NFL teams, think about them. The Bears, the Vikings, you go on and on down the list. They spend decades trying to find the quarterback. And when you get the quarterback right, it makes everything easier. The Bengals were irrelevant till they got Joe Burrow. The Jags were irrelevant till they got Trevor Lawrence. Now they're probably 2 of the 5 Super Bowl favorites. When you have that guy, you hold on, you don't push him out the door. Well, now Aaron Rodgers pushed out the door. Jordan Love is a disaster. Halfway through his first year as a starter, they're putting out statements saying they need more time to evaluate him. That is not a good sign. I was dead right on that. Finally, a really fun one where Aaron was wrong. So I know the World Series TV ratings were low, okay? But why I bring it up is because I thought Joe Davis, the play-by-play man, was the breakout star of the postseason. This guy is so good at his job. But here's where Aaron was wrong. So I had just started at Fox maybe 6 months or so before he got hired by Fox. You go back and look it up. It was 2013, 2014, 2015, somewhere in there. And it was funny because I remember he was when he was hired, he was the youngest play-by-play person ever hired in the history of, I think, network television. And Fox put out a big press release and blah, 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 blah. And I remember sitting there as a young Torres. And I don't really get jealous of other people in the business. At least that's my stance now. But I remember at the time sitting there saying, why is this guy getting all the buzz? Who is this guy? Torres has been here. Show Torres some love. Well, then I heard him do about 2 innings, or probably about a half an inning of Dodgers baseball that summer, because he was doing Dodgers games before Vince Scully retired and obviously ultimately passed away. And about half an inning in, I said, oh, this guy is like elite. Well, now he is, of course, the TV voice of the World Series since Joe Buck left 2 years ago. And he is dynamic. He was great on the Diamondbacks Rangers call. He was great on the ALCS. I believe the ALCS was on Fox. This guy is unbelievable. The next great broadcaster. And you will forever know that Torres said, what is the big deal, before he had ever heard him call a game. And then the second I did, I said, oh yeah, this guy is good. All right, I think that's it for this episode of the Aaron Torres Sports Podcast. Do think it is time for me to get out of here. If you're not subscribed to the show, please make sure to do so. Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Music, wherever you listen to podcasts, make sure to subscribe. Also, make sure to rate and review the show. Go ahead, give us a quick 5 stars. Let us know what you like, what you don't like, all that good stuff. Make sure you're following on social media at Aaron_Torres on Twitter, at Aaron Torres Pod on Instagram, Aaron Torres Pod on TikTok. We're doing good over there. I just had a video blow up over there. I actually like TikTok. It's a lot of fun. You should check me out there. You should sign up for an account if you have not already, just to follow Torres. But make sure you're following there. Make sure you're following on YouTube. Of course, Aaron Torres on YouTube. And that's it. Thank you to our partners, DraftKings Sportsbook and the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Bet $5 on any game. Get $200 in bonus bets instantly when you use the code Torres. That is, of course, for first-time customers only. I think that's all for today, and I think that's all for this week. So thank you for your guys' support. 4 shows this week. Obviously, we mentioned it earlier. Rest in peace, Bobby Knight. But it's been a busy week. And outside of, obviously, the Bobby Knight stuff, a very fun week. So thank you for your guys and girls' support, and it is time to go. Shout out to Torrent Craig. Shout out to Rachel, who hates my voice. Shout out to JJ Redick, you F-head. Unblock me, bro. I'll be back on Monday. New episode, Aaron Torres Pod.